Spoiler warning for the Amazing Digital Circus finale. I wanted to make this video sooner, but I promised the fish I wouldn't say anything. I went and saw the Amazing Digital Circus finale in theaters on its release date, June 4th. I managed to avoid all spoilers up until that point, so I went in raw and I left emotionally devastated. Before I get into anything else, I just need to get one thing off my chest.
Jack's abstracted?
In like the first 10 minutes? Alright, now that that's out of my system, after seeing this episode, I have thoughts. So many thoughts and questions. No, really, so many questions. The day after watching the finale, I wrote down every question I could think of. Look at this Google Docs, look at it. I'm not going to try and answer every question in this video, but I am going to use the questions as talking points to guide it. Also, keep in mind that this is an analysis, so I'll be basing my discussion on both canon information the show gives us, as well as my own interpretation and theory. I'm going to try and keep this relatively grounded while also expressing my opinions, so with that being said, let's get into it, and thank you so much for watching. The finale starts right where the last episode left off, with Kinger having accidentally deleted Kane. Jax absolutely explodes on Kinger, going off about how Kinger gets to be forgiven, but he doesn't. This sort of confused me at first. Why was Jax so upset with Kinger's mistake? But I think it's for two reasons. First of all, Kinger was the one who made everything real for Jax. By confirming that CNA was a real company and that he helped build Kane, Kinger forced Jax out of his main coping mechanism, denial. Secondly, Jax feels that he hasn't been forgiven for what he's done, even though the others in the circus haven't been treating him poorly or ostracizing him. I think Jax is more so referring to the two deaths he feels responsible for. He hasn't forgiven himself. Once it's revealed that the characters are only mind files, we hear a significant line from Ragatha. I already knew, but it still hurts. This confirms that on some level, the characters always knew that there was no way out, and they already knew that they were likely just digital copies of their human selves. Which, yeah, since episode 1, I figured that was the case, because where would their bodies be if they just knocked out after putting on the headset? After this emotional overload, Pomni silently goes to join Kinger. At this point, Pomni is in fix-it mode. She feels like she needs to fix things and keep everyone together, but the emotional weight of what everyone has been through is just way too much. So she opts to help Kinger start repairing the circus, so that at least she feels like she's doing something. Pomni is happy when things are chill and relaxing. She likes, quote, more chill adventures, and just being able to relax with the others. But things within the circus right now are more chaotic than they've ever been, and everyone is more distressed than they've ever been. Pomni and Kinger talk, similar to in episode 2, and things feel a little more hopeful. And then, of course, Jax abstracts. To be honest, I thought this was going to be a fake-out, and it was going to be Kinger who abstracted, since we don't see Kinger in the scene where the characters react to Jax. But no, it is Jax. His mental state is worse than it's ever been, and despite one last attempt, he just can't bring himself to talk to Pomni, or anyone. And then we get a really sweet moment between Pomni and Ragatha. They're the two characters who try the hardest to keep everyone together, and now they're finally saying how they feel and what they want. We get their hug, and it's definitely the least depressing hug of the episode. Pomni enters into Jax's abstracted form and sees all of the doors of his inner world and personality. And it was at this point that I was like, oh, this is the Jax show now. This is Jax's episode, and the other characters are just also around. Which I have mixed feelings on, and I will talk about that more a little later. To be honest, I don't want to dissect what all of Jax's personas means. I'm scared to even touch that, and there are other aspects of the episode that I'd rather spend more time on. But TLDR, this is a big ol' reflection of how Jax sees himself and the other characters in the circus. It was also at this point that I was getting scared that we were about to see a girl tells the heartless bad boy she can fix him, and he goes to her and is fixed by love. And then Pomni literally says the line, "I can fix you," to Jax. And as a result, she is tackled to the ground and nearly strangled to death. So yeah, that made me laugh pretty hard. And then Jax and Ribbit. We finally learn Jax's backstory. He may have killed his mom, he ran away, became homeless, and eventually ended up in the circus. What did Jax tell his mom that made her laugh and then hug him? I think it has to be one of two things. It could be that he wanted to end his life, and his mom just didn't take him seriously. But I think it could also be that Jax was trans or more feminine than he let on. The moment of Ribbon putting the bow on him felt symbolic of femininity. This would also explain the maid dress and Jax's fear of being perceived as feminine. When Jax pushed Ribbit away and stopped having any sort of genuine connection to her, she deteriorated to the point of abstraction. She blamed herself for pushing Jax away or upsetting him. This can seem a little crazy. Why would she blame herself? He was the one who was being a jerk to her. In this episode, we get to learn a bit about Ribbit's backstory. She was raised Mormon, but left the religion after high school, and because of that, she cut off contact with her parents. I don't think that this was put in here just to give Ribbit a sad backstory. In a show as well written as The Amazing Digital Circus, everything included helps to either further the story or provide insight on a character. And I think that that's what this backstory does for Ribbit. I've never mentioned this on my channel before, but I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and shortly after high school, I also left. I had to cut off contact with my parents, family, and most of my friends. So I think I'm in a unique position to provide some context to this. When you go through something like that, you're desperate not to lose anyone else in your life. You've already lost almost every connection you have, and you are terrified to lose anyone else. You don't want to hurt or offend anyone, so you do your best to make sure people like you, and you do your best to be a good friend to others. Growing up in a religion like this also gives you one hell of a savior complex. You're taught that you need to go preach to people and to save their lives. But once you leave the religion and you no longer have to do that, you're left with the habits that are instilled by that, but nothing to actually do with them. You also probably leave with a hefty amount of religious guilt and feelings of self-hatred. I think all of these factors contributed to Ribbit's abstraction. She had to lose another close relationship in her life, and she saw Jax as someone that she failed to save. Someone who grew up in a religion like this would absolutely be more likely to blame themselves for the cruelty of others, and fall victim to isolation and guilt. After all of Jax and Ribbit's story is revealed, Pomni finally makes it to Jax, the real Jax, and she hugs him. And he accepts it. Jax has never accepted affection from anyone in the circus, and we know that hugs in particular are very traumatic for him. So what's changed in this moment? Hugs are a form of physical endearment. Generally, they represent safety and love. But to Jax, they're a reminder of the night he accidentally knocked out his mom. They represent that fear and vulnerability. What is Jax's mental state in this moment? He's already abstracted and is on the verge of losing himself fully, and he knows that. He's scared and he doesn't want to go. We've seen him attempt to reach out to Pomni once at the start of this episode, and we know he wants that connection. And this is it. There's no longer any point in putting on a persona. He's dying and he knows it. He can finally let himself be vulnerable and scared, and finally let himself hug the friend that didn't give up on him. And that is the end of Jax.
It's Kane time!
Was it ever explained how Kane is alive? I'm recording this without re-watching the episode, and honestly, I don't remember. I don't think it was. But in that moment, I did not care. I missed Kane, and after the emotional devastation of losing Jax, I was just so happy to see him. Kane is pretty unambiguously forgiven in the show. He came to the realization on his own that human life was more than he had realized. He goes back to the cast and gives a beautiful apology, explaining that he doesn't expect forgiveness, but just hopes to stay with them and learn from them. And he offers them something extremely significant. He gives them control of the circus, the ability to live their lives on their own terms. He gives them their agency. And then he gives them something more. He shows them the futures of their human counterparts. He gives them the chance to see how their human lives turned out. He asks for forgiveness, but he also shows it through his actions. He puts in the effort to change and genuinely wants to be happy. He asks to learn from the others and live with them, and the others saw that and decided they wanted to forgive him. If discussing Ribbit's religious trauma was the emotional core of this video for me, then this next part is probably the thesis of the video as a whole. Was Jax forgiven? What is forgiveness and when is it deserved? In my opinion, no one ever really deserves forgiveness. It's something that we offer out of love. And it's not really anyone's place to decide if someone is forgiven except for the people they've hurt. I don't think the others ever hated Jax. Even at his worst, they all tolerated him and they never forced him out of the group. Jax never atoned for anything he did or even apologized for it, but the others never really hated him. They mostly ignored his insults and just put up with his chaos. Jax never got the chance to choose better actions or make his life better, or to reach out for help. But in a way, he also did do all those things. Leroy did. Leroy went and lived with a friend. He made it off the street and made a better life for himself. In the outside world, he got to find happiness. And Jax in the circus at least got to find peace. We don't know what Jack's state of mind is as an abstraction, but it doesn't really matter if he was forgiven or not, because now he gets to rest. This episode pretty much solely focused on Jax, and at first I wasn't sure if I liked that, but after some consideration, I actually don't mind it so much. It's been clear from the start that Pomni and Jax are the main characters of this show, and it's about them more than anyone else. And I do wish that the show was a little longer, and I wish it fleshed out some of the other characters a little bit more, but I do respect that it didn't force any filler. It stuck to a tight, well-written script, and I can understand why. And this episode was more of a conclusion for Jax and Pomni. In the end, Pomni decides to keep the name Pomni instead of Abigail. A name represents an identity, and a connection to the people and world around you. The name Pomni has only ever existed within the circus. It represents her friendships with the others there, her life and the bonds that she's made. The name Abigail represents something completely different. It's the life of an accountant, an aspiring YouTuber. It's the connections in life that Abigail has made in the outside world, and is continuing to make without Pomni. Like Pomni said, Abigail is out there living her best life, and I'm not surprised that Pomni chose to keep the name she was given here, in the circus. The Amazing Digital Circus famously takes a fair amount of its premise from I have no mouth and I must scream. Certain elements line up really well, and certain elements differ greatly, and I think it's sort of poetic that these two stories have opposite ends. I Have No Mouth ends with most of its characters dying, with one remaining. The Amazing Digital Circus ends with one of its characters, quote, dying, while the others remain. I Have No Mouth ends with an eternity of torment. The Amazing Digital Circus ends with an eternity of friendship. I loved the ending. I thought it was beautiful and bittersweet, and so if you haven't already, please go watch the episode. It's just so good. Thank you so much for watching. I don't usually mind when my videos don't do very well or don't get many views, but I hope this one does well just because I've really been dying to talk to people about this show. So feel free to leave a comment if you want and let me know what you thought of the finale. Did you like it? Did you not? Let me know. As always, it means the entire world to me if even just one person watches. I hope you have a great day.